Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament Gospels, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we're looking at Jesus challenging or challenges Peter. And this comes from John 21, verses 15 through 25. And if you followed us yesterday, we saw that Jesus appeared again to them. He did the miracle where he told them to cast their nets on the other side of the boat, and they pulled in a ton of fish after not catching any fish all night. John recognized him. Peter swam to shore, and Jesus had set the scene, kind of the scene here for Peter, and he was cooking them breakfast. And so, verse 15 of John 21 says, After breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And the thing we have to understand, and I'll go through this in the notes, is we have the one word for love here, but in the Greek there's many words for love, and the word love that Jesus uses these first two times is agape, which is a Christ-like love. And so um, Peter responds, "Yes, Lord." Peter replied, "You know I love you." And he responded with phileo, which is a brotherly friendship love, because he couldn't respond with agape because he knew what he had just done. And so then Jesus says, "Then feed my lambs," Jesus told him. Jesus repeated the question, "Simon, son of John, do you agape me?" And and, uh, and yes, Lord, Peter says, "You know I phileo you." Then he says, "Then take care of my sheep," Jesus said. A third time he asked him, "Simon, son of John, do you?" And this time he uses phileo me. And Peter was hurt that Jesus had asked the question a third time. He said, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I phileo you." And it was, basically saying, "Yes, you're my friend." And so Jesus said, "Then feed my sheep." And so in verse 18, he says, "I tell you the truth. When you were young, you were able to do as you like. You dressed yourself and went wherever you wanted to go. But when you are old, you will stretch out your hands, and others will dress you and take you where you want to go." Verse 19, John says, Jesus said this to let him know by what kind of death he would glorify God. Then Jesus told him, "Follow me." Peter turned around and saw behind them the disciple Jesus loved, the one who had leaned over to Jesus during the supper and asked, "Lord, who will betray you?" Peter asked Jesus, "What about him, Lord?" And Jesus replied, "If I want him to remain alive until I return, what is it to you? As for you, follow me." He's basically said, don't worry about him. You worry about yourself. And so the rumor spread among the community of believers that this disciple wouldn't die, talking about John. But that isn't what Jesus said at all. He only said, "If I wanted him to remain alive until I return, what is that to you?" Verse 24 said, "This disciple is the one who testifies to these events and has recorded them here." Again, John talking about himself. And we know that his accounts of these things is accurate. He's saying, "Look, I was here. This is me. These things are accurate." And he finishes John. This is the end of John. He says, "Jesus also did many other things. If they were all written down," he says, "I suppose the whole world could not contain the books that would be written." And so we see this kind of interesting interaction between Jesus and Peter. And so he asked him if he loved him three times. And this is his way of repairing the relationship, right? Peter had denied him three times. And so Jesus asks him three times if he loves him. And the first two times he says, "Do you agape me?" Well, Peter knows that he does not have that kind of love. It's the kind of love we're to strive for, but it's a Christ-like love. And so both times Peter responds with, "Yes, I phileo you," saying, "Look, in essence, you are my friend." And um and so the third time when Jesus asks him that, he's asking, "Are you even my friend?" And so you know that that's why when Peter was hurt, because he said it twice already. And so he responds with that third time, "Yes, you know I phileo you." And each time Jesus is welcome to take care of his sheep, to feed his sheep, and to follow him. And it's kind of setting him up, let him know, hey, you're going to be, taking care of the church. Right? You're going to be a leader, a part of this, taking care of the church. And so Jesus here is not settling for some quick superficial answer. He's taking him through this process, and he was getting to the heart of the matter of, bringing Peter back in. Peter had to face his true feelings and motivations for when Jesus confronted him. This was you know this was predicted, right? Jesus predicted um, what he would do, and so now he's bringing him back in, and for showing, I think showing him forgiveness, and bringing him back in to saying, hey, you know what, I'm asking you this 3 times, you denied me 3 times, and so this is the process where I'm using to bring you back into the fold, to say. And so Jesus is welcoming back and saying, look, you're going to be taking care of my sheep, and I want you to know that. He then goes on when he talks about his arms being spread out and not clothing himself. Jesus was predicting Peter's death by crucifixion, and basically tradition indicates that Peter was crucified for his faith, but he was actually crucified upside down because he did not feel worthy of dying in the same way the Lord is. Now, we don't have solid evidence for that. Again, that's church tradition, but obviously Jesus here was predicting, and John says that he was going to die by crucifixion as well. And so, despite what Peter's future held, Jesus told him to follow him. He's like, look, you have to follow me, and take care of my family. And so Peter then you know, he asked about John, how John would die. And so like, one of the things we have to do is, we may be uncertain and fearful about our future, but if we know God is in control, we can confidently follow Jesus. And so we don't need to be doing what Peter did here and worry about like others. That's one of the main problems, is it's like, well, what about this person? What do we, let's focus on this one. And Jesus basically replied and said, you know what? Worry about yourself. Don't worry about John. Worry about yourself. He's like, if I want John to live until I come back again, what is it to you? And so again, they said there's this rumor that, that started. It's like, oh, John's going to live until Jesus. And that's not true. We know that's not true. John says it's not true. But he was just saying, what is it? What does it matter to you? And so Jesus responds to use as he did Peter. Said, was it to you? Are you, as for you, follow me. And so John then states his, we saw in the previous chapter that John stated his purpose for writing his gospel, and that was to show that Jesus was the Son of God. And those who read the Gospel of John, just like what he was put out there for, have to make a choice. Is Jesus the Son of God, or isn't he? And so, it's up to you to decide. And this is one of the things, right? To me, if you read the evidence, you look at the evidence of all the Gospels, then it's clear. But in the end, if you're not following Jesus, then you have to decide if what John and the other, the other people, the other authors of the Gospels write, is this true or is it made up? I think, if you look at the evidence, you look at the tons of manuscripts, you look at all the things that that they put in here, and everything, the way it's just survived, and all the things they talk about and what they were willing to go through. If this was not true, they would not go through this. They wouldn't have written these letters. If Jesus has died and didn't resurrect, then we wouldn't have these letters. These guys are not going to make this stuff up to try to keep something going and be willing to die for it like Jesus did. Now, no one does that. No one, especially multiple people. Maybe one person who's crazy, right? But not multiple people who are going to be willing to go to these extremes for something that they know is a lie. It's just not going to happen. And so I challenge you as as we finish this up, and we finish John's book here, to go back through it and just look at all the evidence, look at all the things, from history, from everything, and look at the evidence that Jesus clearly was who he said he was. He died on the cross. He did resurrect from the grave, and now he offers us salvation, through that sacrifice. And so we just need to look at that. But what I love about this story is the forgiveness that Jesus offers Peter. Now he does it in a hard way. I mean, that would have not been an easy conversation, right? Having your friend and Jesus ask you those questions, and basically in a sense, in the end, say, are you even my friend, right? And you're sitting there saying, yes, you're my friend, I love you, yes, yes. And he keeps asking, that had to be hard, but Jesus had to go through this process. I think had to bring Peter back in. And this contrast, like we talked about earlier with Judas. Judas could have had the same forgiveness, And that's what we don't, so, we don't talk about that sometimes. But Judas gave up, right? Judas gave up in his guilt and in his, his feeling bad, but mainly in his guilt. He went and hung himself. Now, Peter could have done the same thing, right? Peter could, he denied Jesus. Jesus was right there when he did it. Peter could have gone and done the same thing, but Peter stayed, right? He continued to follow Jesus. He continued to be around. Whereas Judas just went out and gave up. And so that's the thing. We have to make sure we don't give up. We don't fall into the trap that Judas fell into when it comes to our faith and our Christianity. We need to make strong. Coming back into it's going to be hard. This wasn't easy for Peter, right? And if you fail Jesus and fail, and we're going to, it's hard. It can be hard to come back, but we have to come back and we have to be confident and strong in our faith and continue into it. But I hope that you get something out of this message to understand that it doesn't matter how bad you mess up, right? And it does not matter how bad you mess up. You're always welcome back or welcomed back to Jesus. Now sometimes the church may not do the best job of welcoming people back, and sometimes we shame people, and sometimes we're not perfect at that. But don't judge us based on that. Our human failings. You know, look at it from this perspective and understand that it doesn't matter how bad you mess up. Jesus is always going to be willing to welcome you back to Him and for you to follow Him. As always, I appreciate everyone for watching. I know we're just a couple days away from finishing this up, and I hope this has been helpful and beneficial, and I hope y'all have learned from it. I know I have, but I really do appreciate those who've followed all along. If you haven't followed along, there's a playlist we've created here. You can go back through and watch all these and catch up through them. But as always, I appreciate everyone for watching. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do that, because we're going to continue to do little series. We're going to go move into more of a weekly thing here, a weekly cadence. But looking at that, but I really have appreciated it. Thank you.